Welcome to the Driving the World podcast series. I'm your host, Cully Holland. Today we have Adam Miles, our corporate mechanical engineer, and we'll be discussing our right angle gearboxes. Hey, Adam, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for coming back on. So today we're going to talk about our right angle gearboxes. So let's just start off as, what are they?
Okay. Yeah. So I think for the purpose of this conversation, we'll keep it to our kind of middle of the road standard offerings and not get into our larger industrial gearing or servo specific. So our portfolio is going to consist of S boxes, W boxes, and K boxes.
Okay, so for some of our audience that may not be familiar with our nomenclature, what is a K box, an S box, and a W box?
Yeah, so starting with the S box, it's going to be a worm type gearing. W boxes are spiroplan, and we actually have two K series, K9, which is hypoid gearing, and then our K7, which is a helical bevel gearing set.
Okay, so they're all right angle gearboxes, but they have different types of gearing. So I'm sure that means there's some differences internally. So why don't we try and get into that a little bit and figure out exactly what the differences are?
Yeah, definitely. To take it really simply, each of these is going to have what we would essentially call a ring gear and then a pinion gear.
Okay.
So starting with our S series, that pinion gear is going to come in across the top of the ring, really tangential to the ring. Then moving down to our K7, it's going to come in perpendicular, really pointing towards the center. And then with the W and the K9, they're going to fall in between on the angle.
Okay, so it's really just how the gears line up and the orientation of them. And I'm sure this is going to have some effect on maybe some pros and some upsides of the gearboxes and maybe some other effects in the overall operation. So why don't we touch on that?
Yeah, definitely. Again, starting with the S series, with that pinion gear coming across the top, you have a lot of sliding action. They tend to be lower on the efficiency scale. But with that, we have more tooth contact usually, and it's going to lead to a lower operating volume as well as a higher shock load capacity.
Well, those are two big things right there for the S box. I know noise is a big hot topic right now in the industry. So if that's how the S box is happening, why don't we work down the wheel and talk about the hypoid and the spiroplan?
Yeah, so the hypoid and spiroplan, again, fall in between on that range. So their efficiency is going to be better than the worm, but not as ultimately good as our K7. In both cases, those boxes really serve to fill in gaps in our portfolio. So we just have a nice smooth step up if you were looking at the output torques across our range. And then also the spiroplan and the hypoid are going to be a little bit more compact gearing typically. And we offer some of them in aluminum housings. So there are going to be applications where you may be able to fit that box where you couldn't fit something else.
Okay, so they seem to just fill the holes rather well. And then we have our K7 series down at the bottom with the perpendicular gear mesh. So what about them?
Yeah, so the K7 is really going to be the high end of efficiency, 95% plus efficient in most and all ratios. It's really the workhorse of our lineup. It's a huge product range. Just a solid all around gearbox.
Well, fantastic. So all the K box has a huge range, and I'm assuming our S box does too. Do the K9 and W span and fill all the holes through all the sizes, or are they kind of just?
They're primarily, I'd say, the bottom quarter of the range.
Okay.
We don't go as large in those sizes, again, just due to the compact nature of the gearing. But that's also where it tends to be more important to have those smooth steps between torque outputs.
That's very good to know. And it sounds like we've covered the basics of the differences between the gearing. So when we get to the end of the gearbox, the output shaft, are there any, key differences, or are they pretty much the same across the board?
Yeah, so all four of those offerings, for the most part, are going to have our standard offerings of solid shaft, hollow shaft, a torque lock, or in some sizes, shrink disc. Even in some cases in K and S, we offer an internal spline. Also, they're all going to fit into our general SEW portfolio, so they're going to work with our integral motors.
Okay.
And pretty much all of our standard options are going to apply. So whether that be flanges, pane options, things of that nature.
Well, very good. It sounds like we've touched on a lot of the basics and an overview of our right angle gearboxes. So they they all have similar outputs, but the internal workings are a little different and have some pros to them where you might fit them in somewhere else. Is there anything else you'd like to talk on about our right angles?
I would just say, if there are any specific questions, please just reach out to any of our district sales managers or regional engineering groups, and they'd be able to help you, find the right fit for your application.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.